Welcome into an all-new betting preview for this week's Rocket Mortgage Classic. I'm Rick Gaiman, that right there, Andy Lack. Andy, hello, happy Tuesday to you.
Good morning, man. We're starting to get into the dog days of summer here as it pertains to the golf calendar, right? A little bit of a lull in the stretch, but I still see a ton of opportunity on this board. So excited to talk through it with you.
Yeah, I mean, let's see, there are, I think, 6 events left before the start of the playoffs, which means there's really only 9 events left in this season. So yeah, this is the sprint to the finish line. I mean, Justin Thomas literally added this to his schedule because he's on the outside looking in, top 70 making the playoffs. It has just created a situation where, like I said, we're sprinting now. We're sprinting.
Right, which is a very long way of saying you could stick a fork in me as it relates to our one and done purposes. Yeah, I agree. It's sneaking up on us before we know it. I mean, the British is going to be here. Gosh, it's 3 weeks after we get through the Rocket Mortgage, and one of them they'll already be across the pond for the Genesis, because it goes Rocket, John Deere, Genesis, British, right?
Rocket, John Deere, yeah, then Scottish with the Barbasol as the alternate field event, then the Open with the Barracuda as the alternate, then the 3M, and then the Wyndham's the last event, and then boom, 3 events were done.
And they are still going with removing one of the playoff events. So it's Memphis, Olympia Fields, East Lake. That's Correct. It, right? And 70 in... Is this the first year where they're cutting it down too? So only 70 guys in Memphis, huh?
Correct. 70, 50, 30 is the 3 playoff events, as opposed to 125, 70, 30.
Wow. Yeah. So sprint is right. It's do or die time for these guys. I think JT just getting us back to the Rocket Mortgage. He's like right on the bubble right now, right? He's 65th or 66 or something like that.
He was like 76th or something. I'll check it in a second. But yeah, let's talk about Detroit Golf Club, because this is certainly no TPC River Highlands, and this is the best field that we've gotten at this event in its 5-year history, with guys like Justin Thomas and Tony Finau and Max Homa and Colin Morikawa. But let's start with the golf course. And we don't have the illustrious history around this place as we do for a lot of other stops on the PGA Tour schedule. So how are we assessing it and looking at the skill sets that we think are going to find success this week?
Yeah, this is a great classical Donald Ross golf course that unfortunately would have played a hell of a lot better in 1950 than it would in 2023. It's just a bit outdated when it comes to modern technology. And what we have as a result of that is a lot of wedges, a lot of shots from inside 150 yards. We've seen power hitters be able to have a ton of success here when you have guys like Finau, Cameron Davis, and Bryson winning in 3 of the 4 years. I remember specifically the Cameron Davis year, watching, because I had another guy in the mix that year that wasn't Davis. And I remember being like, man, Davis is hitting some really loose drives here down the stretch, and he is not getting penalized whatsoever. And that is unfortunately the nature of this golf course. I mean, the rough is a little thicker and lush, but the course plays so short that you are easily able to hack wedges out of there without a problem. And then when it comes down to it, this is just a golf course with a really high greens and regulation percentage, right? So at the end of the day, the guy who putts the best is going to have the most success here. And we've seen that bear out in the stats where putting has played far more of a role than we would see at major venues or even golf courses like Torrey Pines or Riviera, right? The separation that a player like Tony Finau or Max Homa or Colin Morikawa or any of the elite players in this field, elite tee to green players, the separation that they are going to be able to accumulate over, say, a Brendan Todd at a major venue or one of those previous bigger ballparks that I've mentioned is far less at Detroit Golf Club than one of those bigger places. So, you know, it's really a course with a lot more variance because of the importance of putting here.
23 under par has been the average winning score in the first 4 years. Strokes gained putting, if you look at it just statistically in the correlation or in the regression model, ranks 12th, which means there's only 11 other courses in which strokes gained putting has been more correlated to success. And then you start to look at some of the winners and you see, okay, Tony Finau and Bryson DeChambeau and Cam Davis and Matt Wolff and guys that generally try to bomb it around the yard without much regard for accuracy. And I think we are starting to build a little bit of a profile for golfers this week here, Andy, and odds makers, and this is the grid from oddschecker.com where you can see across the industry, have generally stuck a lot of guys between 14 and 18 to 1. It's led off by Ricky Fowler and Tony Finau at 14, Colin Morikawa at 16, Hideki, Justin Thomas, Max Homa at 18 to 1, depending on where you're looking. Tom Kim might also be in that mix as well, but this is kind of a pick your poison at the top of the board.
Yeah. Gosh, man, it is crazy to see Ricky Fowler as, I guess, the co-tournament favorite at this point with Tony Finau.
I actually think it's crazier to see Tony Finau as the co-tournament favorite than Ricky Fowler. I mean, both of them I think are pretty surprising, but I'm not there on Tony, and Ricky has been playing much better golf.
Okay. I'm definitely a little bit warmer on Tony than you are in terms of when you look at Tony's performance on these types of golf courses versus Ricky's performance. Finau is the number one guy in opportunities gained, the number one guy on easy courses, the number one guy in birdies, and a top 5 iron player in the world this year. So I actually think you're getting a somewhat fair price on Finau. I haven't gotten there yet personally, but Finau and Justin Thomas would be the two guys that I'm probably deciding between at the top of the board.
JT is more interesting to me, admittedly. Comes off the 7 strokes gained on approach, and I don't know. There's been a lot of overreaction in both directions to the play of Justin Thomas, but the Finau stuff, like hemorrhaging strokes on the putting surface over the last 7 starts, does not feel like a great way to win a 25 under birdie fest to me.
Right. That's the big concern with Finau. And you could say, well, putting is the easiest stat to flip on a week-to-week basis. And he flipped it last year where there were a lot of putting concerns, and then he just started to get hot with the putter. But I agree with you mainly on Justin Thomas in the sense that the Justin Thomas is broken thing was never a thought that really crossed my mind. I mean, this is still a guy that has like 9 top 25s this season. The standards are just high for him because this is a guy that at one point in his career was averaging 2-3 wins a season. Yeah. And he's basically had 2 victories in the last probably over 24 months now in the Players in the PGA Championship. So big ones, not to take away from him at all. But I love to see the irons really, really come back, because when Justin Thomas is at his best, it's never been that Justin Thomas is at his best when he's an elite putter, right? That's never been his profile throughout his entire career when he was playing at his peak level. Justin Thomas is at his best is when he returns to being a top 3 iron player in the world. And that's something that he's lost this year, right? And if we get to back to a point where Justin Thomas is even a neutral putter or a slightly positive putter, but those irons are back to that peak JT levels, that's when we're going to start to see JT really actualize his potential and start reeling off wins. And that's what I saw from him out of the Travelers, where those irons get back to +7 and him be able to, because of the opportunities that he was able to give himself, finish top 10 and get to 15, 16, 17 under par without even really putting that much pressure on the putter.
He has 66 in the FedEx Cup standings. I looked it up. So certainly plenty to play for. Are we just overlooking that Colin Morikawa basically in 11 of his last 12 rounds has been phenomenal? The problem being he had 1 round bad enough at the Travelers to miss the cut, and 1 round that he did not play at the Memorial, in which adds a WD to the resume that his recent run is also being completely overreacted to.
Right. And I think he's a good player to talk about hand in hand with Justin Thomas, because they tend to do the same things really well and they tend to struggle with the same things at the same time. I probably have a little more faith in Justin Thomas as it pertains to this week. There's just a little bit more evidence and history of Justin Thomas succeeding and going really low on these easier golf courses, whereas Morikawa doesn't have as much of a resume of success in the 20 under, 25 under tournaments. It's not that he hasn't done it before or that he's incapable of doing it, but I would agree. I'm not sounding the alarm bells for Colin Morikawa. He's still on my Ryder Cup team. I think I'm not there yet in terms of like, we got to remove this guy for DJ or whoever you want to plug in there in the final spot. But I would still favor Justin Thomas to Morikawa this week if we're talking in a head-to-head situation.
I'm just going to cheat a little bit. I just removed everything else from this stat profile. All I did is just zoom in and crop the strokes gain numbers for the last, 4, 8, 12 rounds. And if you just took this sheet of paper and ran it across a lot of people's desk, they'd be very excited about this stat profile. And then when you say, oh, it's Colin Morikawa, who, one, not a reliable narrator of his own game, and two, like gets the panic button pressed way more frequently than it should. I think the name, the WD, the recent miscut sounds a lot worse than what it actually is.
Totally agree. And probably if we're sticking with the blind resume test, to your point on Ricky, if you just showed Ricky's finishes this season, you would be like, yeah, I mean, this guy could be 9-1 in this field, right?
He's the best player in this field the last 36 rounds by a mile, right? He's gaining nearly 2 strokes per round, 1.8. Next best is Austin Eckroat and Hideki Matsuyama at 1.2. It's just like he's been by far the best player in the field over the last couple months.
Right. And okay, speaking of Hideki, I'm glad you brought up Hideki too.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to discount him either. I want to give Hideki his due justice here.
The dude is like being Hideki, right? Like, what are we doing here? This is sick.
And, as you mentioned, the irons are he's back to being one of the top 10 iron players in the world. Obviously, you have the same concerns with the flat stick that we touched on a little bit with Morikawa and Justin Thomas. It's not like Hideki hasn't won Birdie Fest in the past. I mean, he won, I don't know if his last win was the Sony Open, but in the last 2 years, he won the Sony Open at 19 under par, right? So I don't have as much concerns about Hideki being able to get to that winning score number as others may. I just have a hard time choosing between it because I really like, where are you at? What's the temperature of the room for you on Tom Kim this week too?
Lukewarm,
a little cooler. Yeah, he hit the ball really well at the Travelers, but he's another guy where the putter has kind of fallen off a bit of a cliff this year as well,
which is a concern. Certainly a concern. I like. So remember, if we just rewound to January, the case for Tom Kim would be short but accurate, potentially an elite iron player, and he can get hot with the putter, and he's a very good putter in general. Okay, accuracy and short still kind of exists. Top-notch iron play. Okay, we're still there, but the putter is lost, which is a problem. So you cannot be as excited, which that was a very high bar, but you cannot be as excited for him now as you were in January. But I think I am certainly warming to some of the stuff that we've seen because this is better than what it was to start 2023.
Agreed. I don't know if I'm there on Tom Kim from an outright perspective, but he's definitely in consideration for my DraftKings pool. Real quick, last one. I want to mention Max Homa too. And this may be better for DraftKings purposes because I think he will be lower owned than some of his similarly priced peers. But there's a lot of Silverado in this golf course, and I like what Max Homa tends to do on these classical golden age tree line parkland designs, whether it be, TPC Potomac, very similar agronomy to what we're seeing here. I mentioned Silverado has that bent Poa greens. So I just want to flag Max Homa as another guy where, like, again, I'm not taking him off my Ryder Cup team just yet. And I think one of the Max Homa, Justin Thomas contingent that are starting to get passed by in many's minds for guys like Keegan. I think at least one, if not both, makes a pretty fairly big statement this week.
Max Homa, 18-1 across the board. Now we've got the next tier of golfers, which is basically 8 golfers that range from 20 to 1 to 50 to 1. So we do fall off a cliff a little bit here. That is Tom Kim, Sung Jae Im, Keegan Bradley back at it again, Cam Davis, past champion of this event. Then Brian Harmon, Austin Eckert, and Ludwig Aberg, which I'm a buyer on this guy. Andy, the game is super sharp. He's 45 to 1. This is probably the weakest field that he has played this year. I don't know if this is the spot for a breakout victory, but we have seen, and even further than this, we have seen this event, obviously very small sample size, produce a couple of really long shot options.
Yeah, I posed this question on a podcast I did yesterday, but has Ludwig already become overrated before he's had the opportunity to be properly rated?
Well, I guess it depends. Like, what do you, if I think Ludwig is like the 38th best player in the world, am I overrating him or am I underrating him?
I think you're overrating him.
Okay.
I just, even like a good comparison point is, and it's really, Ludwig is not the first heavily touted and heavily hailed collegiate player to make his jump onto the tour.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, it doesn't happen that often where the last one I can think of is Matt Wolff, right? At the 3M Open, where Matt Wolff won in one of his first 3 starts. And Wolff, in a similarly strength field to what we have this week at the Rocket Mortgage, Wolff is going off at 100, 150 to 1. And here you have Ludwig all the way down to 45. That's my hesitation with Ludwig. I'm a buyer on him as well. I think Ludwig should be in the Ryder Cup team, at least at the bare minimum in the conversation. I can't get behind this price. And that is the holdup for me, is I think that there is such a necessity for us to be early on some of these exciting young players that we sometimes put the cart before the horse. And I'm just not there on the price when it comes to Ludwig, which is a shame because I don't want to come off as a non-buyer on him, but I'm not a buyer on him at 45 to 1.
Is there anybody in this range that you would click as maybe the second name on your card, or depending on what you do at the top, maybe the third name, or how deep you want to go?
Yeah, I like both Ben-An and Jaeger.
Yeah, Ben-An is the one. That one got me too.
Yeah, I like the way he's playing. Sneaky long. Like when I ran my numbers, I did not realize how long the player Ben-An is off the tee. I think he'll have the opportunity to take advantage of this course. And you look at the ball striking numbers, even the miscut at Travelers, that's an okay miscut, right? I mean, he still was out at the very minimum neutral at the Travelers.
Not a good course for him, right? You want a course that is just going to allow him to blast it around wherever. And that is not 6850 par 70 TPC River Highlands. Still gains a little bit off that's about as good of a miscut as you're ever going to get out of Ben-An.
Right. And you're starting to see those +6, +5 ball striking performances out of him once again. So I actually, and he has a 13th at this course as well. So he does have a little decent course history to his name. Not that I would go over the top on course history on a rather unnuanced course like this anyway. But on Ben-An and Jaeger would be the 2 guys in the 30 to, I guess, 60 or 70 range that I have some interest in. Whereas you look at those ball striking numbers with Jaeger as well, he's starting to percolate a lot around the +5, +6, +7 type of results that we like to see. That's indicative of a player that may be a little bit closer than his results suggest in terms of breaking through.
Jaeger's Sunday at the Travelers Championship was the single worst putting round of the season by any golfer. So,
are you serious? What was it? +5, -6 or something like that?
7.5, I think it was. Yeah. So, which I guess the good news is, he's not going to be that bad. He's not going to be that bad again, right? 7.46. He lost on Sunday. That's the worst of any golfer this season. So, which is pretty out of character for him. So you imagine that is very much on the verge of bouncing back.
Right. Could be it's darkest before dawn situation with him as well. I mean, I would still give credence to the ball striking numbers and hope that the category that is generally easiest to flip historically, does a little bit of flipping in this sense. And yeah, and then as we get down to these guys in the 50s and 60s, yeah, Alex Smalley, you read my mind. I mean, look at the way that he's hitting the ball lately. I tend to like him more. The Wyndham might be the spot for him that I think is really where he breaks through and has his best chance of winning. But another guy that, look at the way that he hit the ball at the Travelers, and still not a household name, but somebody that you and I have been talking about for months now.
Well, I just like that he has done this before, right? This looks a lot like the end of the fall and the start of 2023, and then he kind of lost it. And that stretch where he was playing his best golf, it was T11, T4, T5, had a good run at the American Express, finished top 25 there, and then kind of lost it. And his spring was pretty bad. And now getting back to that profile that we know he is capable of doing, we know that he has done before. Like, I like that, right? That tells me the stuff in the fall was not a flash in the pan. The stuff now is probably not a flash in the pan. That this is probably the type of golfer he ends up being as he continues to grow and mature on the PGA Tour.
Where do you stand, because he's in this tier as well, where do you stand on the Eckroat hype? Buy-in, sell-in, or lukewarm?
Completely well-deserved, but kind of in your conversation of Ludwig, like not here, not at 50, I don't think is the number, and not at whatever popularity he's going to be on DraftKings. But, remember that Eckroat was one of these kids coming out of college that everybody was very excited about, right? And it was not a win immediately situation, but now you see, like, you cannot deny what he has been up to over the course of his last couple of months. But this is one of those weird situations where I'm actually so high on him that I don't even think 50-1 here makes sense, because I'll get him. I think he can win at better fields. So it actually makes sense for me to wait, get better odds, not buy in short now, because I am so high on. I feel like if you are not as high on him, you just walk into the trap this week.
Just to give a little color and background on Eckroat, and forgive me because I have said this before on podcasts, so forgive me to some listeners if I'm repeating myself. My buddy, who's from Oklahoma, plays out of the same club, a club called Oak Tree in Edmond, Oklahoma, as Eckroat, Matt Wolff, and Victor Hovland. And there are stories of Eckroat kicking Hovland and Wolff's ass in money games, where one particular one was Eckroat shot like 61, which I believe is the course record at Oak Tree, and took Hovland and Wolff's money, who both shot like 64s. And the members over there say, no, Eckroat is really, I don't know if they're putting him ahead of Hovland, but there was a big Wolff Eckroat thing at the club, and all the people over there said Eckroat's actually the better player than Wolff, which is actually feels like it's already starting to come to fruition. So yeah, I agree. I'm incredibly high on the kid, just not at this number. If I asked you, Rick, because I think this is a fun question.
Yeah.
If we're saying, okay, let's be early on somebody.
Okay.
And I told you who is the best bet at their current numbers on the odds checker grid, and I gave you Ludwig, Eckroat, Gordon Sargent, and Akshay. Who's the best bet this week of those four?
So Sargent's about 75-1. Let's see what
Akshay, I think, is 100, right?
Akshay is, I mean, it's as long as 125.
That's my answer, by the way.
You think?
I think the best bet this week is Akshay, who's yesterday's news. The guy has 2 top 5s on the PGA Tour already. Eckroat, Ludwig, and Gordon have 0 combined.
Yeah, but I mean, he also has lost 15 strokes putting in his last like, I think it's a good question. I don't think it's Sargent.
I agree.
Love the kid. I saw him a lot at LICC. He is going to be awesome. Right. Little raw right now. Little raw.
Right. I mean, could you imagine what his odds would be this week, though, if he didn't get robbed on 18 by a faulty cup?
Which, by the way, did they go out and fix that?
I don't know. I definitely didn't see it happen throughout the rest of the day, which, if you actually look back through the video, this is not me carrying water for the USGA. he did ram that one
It
in.
doesn't matter. You can't hit the back of the cup from 18 inches and have it pop out. It doesn't matter. That was a bad cup. It's okay. I think I'd go Eckroat, honestly. I
Okay.
I think that listen, I mean, what he did at the US Open, what he's done in other weeks, coming out of that pipeline, like that Oklahoma State pipeline allows these guys, like you were kind of alluding to, like
Straw.
compete every day, like when you turn 18, right? And you're thrown into it, and then you go to these clubs and you compete against the same guys and you compete against pros. And a lot of these guys who are just a little bit younger than Ricky competed against Ricky when he was there. Like it's a very competitive environment to be in. So I'd probably still go Eckroat in that situation.
Very fair. I mean, as we get a little bit farther, any names as we get closer to triple digits for you?
I guess this is kind of the tournament, right? You know, we have seen a couple of long shot winners. I think that on the surface, I'm kind of interested in Doug Gim at 80. He's been playing a lot better. I think that from a pure course fit perspective, Taylor Pendrith is a little bit interesting, though he hasn't been playing as well as I would hope. He's 100-1.
Almost won it last year too, by the way.
Yep. And outside of that, I think we start entering. Like, I love Carson Young. He's not going to win this golf tournament, right? It's just the outrights, like Vincent Norman, awesome, not going to win the golf tournament. But I think it would be hard to fire an outright number on some of these guys, and I would probably just find them in the finishing position market.
I'm with you. There are a couple names that I'll quickly highlight. I think is a good bounce back spot for Hubbard after letting everybody down last week at the Travelers is a very popular DraftKings option. A good miscut, in my opinion. Like the iron play stayed quite strong. I mean, he still gained, almost 3 strokes on approach there in a miscut. And then, Nate Lashley, who obviously is a former winner here, was another guy that was popping in statistically for me and has the upside that you like to see in terms of being able to win a golf tournament when it comes to his irons. So yeah, I think that if you want to take some shots farther down the board, like I said, the difference that these longer shot guys are able to have versus the elite players is less so on this course than some of the golf courses that do a better job of separating elite tee to green play. So no problem going down to the triple digits, but you may want to utilize them a little bit more in the matchup markets as you have pulled up here.
Yeah, in on Smalley over Moore for me. I'm in on Colin over Tony. I mean, that might just be a little bit of a personal preference, but Colin plus 120 to Tony Finau feels a bit aggressive. And then as I kind of continue, like, I don't love laying minus 140, but Austin Eckroat and Brendan Todd, like, this is such a better spot for Eckroat than it is Todd. But there's a lot of really good options for this week. I like these deeper fields that give us, an Akshay versus a Harry Hall or a Davis Riley versus an Alex Noren. There are some pretty interesting matchups for this week.
I like that one a lot. Riley over Noren, and I like Akshay over Hall. I'm big on Akshay this week. Yeah, I'm big on Akshay this week. I like Davis Riley a lot this week as well, and even Benny On versus Justin Suh. And I like Justin Suh. He's just the putting with him is really what's driving the boat right now, and I'm not sure how sustainable that is. Justin Suh is like one of the best putters in the world. Yeah, have we realized that?
Yes,
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, he is. How about this? So, as most salivate over Luke List's Sunday around TPC River Highlands, even money to Vincent Norman. That's what Vegas thinks about this. And I don't know what their DraftKings prices are off the top of my head. Norman, dude, if you ever get a chance to go out and watch Vincent Norman hit a golf ball, like, cover your ears, take cover. Dude is an absolute masher.
Who are you taking in? Do they have? I thought they had Sam Bennett, Gordon Sargent. That kind of would have been a fun one.
They have Bennett and Simpson. It's Gordon Sargent and Taylor Pendrith.
Okay, who are you taking in that one? Bennett versus Webb.
Bennett.
Yeah.
Webb is kind of cooked, right?
Yeah, the thing that bothered me about Webb is that Paul Tesori basically, it seemed like that breakup had to do with yeah, man, your best days are behind you. I'm gonna go to a guy that really has an opportunity to now compete at the highest level. And Webb, it kind of seemed like was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have a defense of that, but I don't know if Paul Tesori's leaving in that scenario, if he still thinks Webb has top 10 player in the world upside to win majors that he did maybe 8 years ago.
Yeah, and I think Webb is entering, I don't know what you want to call it, like semi-retirement. Like, I think you're only going to see him play a handful of times a year, and it's going to be at like Wyndham and Travelers and like RSM and like places that he's, very comfortable at and has had good success at. I mean, this is not a particularly great profile, and it hasn't been for a year.
He will really start phase 1 into semi-retirement if he gets the assistant captain from ZJ. That's the true telltale sign that it's like, okay, you're developing closer towards being a captain of one of these teams than you are of being a player on one of these teams.
Yes. And now his job is like, you're going to play these events and you'll get paired up with guys and keep an eye out for like the future young guys. Well, when you play with Gordon Sargent, you play with like, you're our intel guy now. That's
right. So I still think Bennett's probably the move in that one as well.
All right. We are going to cover one and done, give an update on our standings, and then talk about who is by far the highest owned golfer on the slate for this week. But first, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Andy Lack is one of the nerdiest golf guys that I know, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. His knowledge of course architecture allows him to create some of the most actionable course previews available, and he offers up pure expertise on his own podcast, the Inside Golf Podcast. Twice a week, he offers course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategy for every PGA Tour event, and he expands the universe by bringing on entertaining and knowledgeable guests who can offer a different viewpoint of the game that we love. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts.
And we're back. The guys over at PrizePicks do not have the golf props up yet, but I saw that the tee times just came out, so I imagine that those will be out shortly. If you are into something called LOL, which I imagine is League of Legends, Solid Snake 5.5 map kills, Andy. I don't even know what that means, but that's available to you if you're interested.
One of the biggest shockers for me as it pertains to content was realizing how much of an economy there is for watching other people play video games. I had no idea that there was such a market for this.
There's an economy for watching people do anything you love, right?
Right.
So that's golf vlogs. That is solving Rubik's cubes. That is playing video games,
skincare.
Anything that you love, there is a fairly large ecosystem for you to be able to watch, and then those people to monetize. That's the best. The best part about the internet, well, good and bad about the internet, is you can find anything you want, and you can find at least 5,000 other people who are as excited about that very niche thing as you. Like that's my life, right? It's like, oh, here's a niche sport and like a niche data side of it, and like, hey, if you're interested in this, like, come and join, we'll all hang together. That the internet allows you to do that in ways that has never been done before,
getting us in the same thought pattern but getting us back to golf. Do you think that how far away are we from like simulator golf being a big market? Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean I think the TGL thing might work. Like it might. I don't think it's for me, but I think it might work.
So they call it, I think it's in Korea, they call it screen golf.
Right.
It is way more popular than golf is. Like 10 times more popular than golf is, because and the technology they have laps anything we have here. It is unbelievable what they have. And it is, it's kind of like Top Golf, right? Where Top Golf is making it more accessible. Screen golf is very accessible. Simulator golf is very accessible. And then when you throw Tiger, Rory, Justin Thomas, Colin Moore, all these guys who are going to play in a Monday night league, I think it's going to continue to be pretty popular. they're building a brand new kind of like Top Golf thing in Vegas, and it's like a one-off. I think it's called Atomic Golf, and it's going to be massive at the Strat. Like it's coming. It's coming big time.
I'd love that you're on the same page with me on this one, because I've had this half-baked take for a while that what is the better investment for the Saudis, buying professional golf or buying Top Golf? And if you actually really wanted to make waves in American golf, and I have long argued that I Top Golf may be a little bit closer than we think in terms of what you may actually want to be investing in if you're talking about making waves in the American golf economy in terms of where we might be headed. So yeah, I mean, I at this point have no idea how to get us back to one and done right now.
I can do
it. But here we are.
If you like numbers and you like simulator golf, you're going to like the site-wide picks over at officefootballpool.com right now, as one man stands at the top of the board as the most popular one and done selection for this week. His name is Ricky Fowler, sitting at 25%, which I think the only one we've seen higher than this on a Tuesday, Andy, was Brooks at I think at the US Open, because people can't use Brooks year round. He wins and finishes second the first two majors. I think he was like 30% on Tuesday when we looked at it. But for a like full field PGA Tour event, I think this is by far the highest. It's Ricky at 25, both Tom Kim and Hideki Matsuyama at 11, Justin Thomas at 8.5, and then Tony Finau and Cam Davis at 5.5 for kind of the top five there.
Listen, I understand why Ricky's ownership is so high. I definitely understand it. But the question that I would ask is, are we sure that this is the best spot to utilize Ricky in one and done? Or is it maybe the Scottish Open?
I was going to say the only other one that I think would make sense as well is the Scottish, which he's had.
I mean, he also did finish runner-up at Royal Liverpool 2014.
Yeah, but are you ever going to play Ricky at like an elevated major? Or no, like you know what I mean? The Scottish is not an elevated event, but it's going to be
a good field, though.
It's going to be a good field, which I guess could be an argument against using him. But I agree that like the links style golf. So here's his results at the Scottish Open. Now this includes both like the European Tour Scottish Open and then when this became a co-sanctioned event, and it dates back 9 years. But Ricky's got 4 consecutive top 10 finishes. He was a better player then. And then last year he finished T47 at the Renaissance Club. But that would be the other one that I think makes the most sense if you want to save Ricky.
And this would even be, I'm probably a little bit warmer on Ricky for his chances to be able to win a major maybe than you are. But the question I would ask you is, if we just compare to other options in this field, assuming that you do have some guys left, like who are you more likely to roll out in one and done at a links golf course for the Open Championship? Ricky, Tom Kim, Hideki, Homa, or JT? Ricky's by far the best Open Championship player of those guys.
Ricky's 1 or 2 on that list. Maybe JT, but no, I think it's Ricky.
Right. So I don't think you're crazy for saying, okay, I've got these 2 length style options for Ricky going forward. Would you go? Harris English just withdrew, by the way, this morning. We should point that out. Would you roll out somebody like Cam Davis or Brian Harman here? And the last thing I would say too on that too, is it crazy to think that Keegan can go back to back the way that he's putting right now?
Yeah, probably. So hold on. Is it like so then now I'm starting to think, unless you are just purely front running, like very much front running in your league, it's pretty wrong to play Ricky this week, right? I mean, if you
I would say so. I mean, I was thinking about using him as it pertains to me and you, but if you're chasing, I don't see a roadmap for being able to justify that.
I agree. And even if you are in like the top 15%, you got to have to kind of be in like the top like 5%, I think, to use him, especially with a couple of good options left. So if you are chasing, see, this is where it kind of gets interesting, right? I mean, God, would you just play Sungjae? You might not even have Sungjae left. Sungjae's probably been used a lot at this point. I think it would be risky, but I don't mind Cam Davis here. He has shown a couple of really good rounds the last couple of weeks, and this is like probably the best spot on tour for him. So I would not mind that, just because there is a pretty sharp drop off from the guys that you want to use.
Well, I would just say if you are chasing and you have the ability to play Max Homa or Morikawa at 2%, and I don't know how much of the population has at least one of the two, but I would imagine there are a fair amount of teams that have at least one of the two. I would play them at 1% if you have one of those guys.
Yeah, I don't love Brian Harman.
Me neither.
I don't love. I play Keegan over Brian Harman. I would play. I mean, I'd probably play Eckroat over Harman. I just don't. I don't know what Harman gets me around this place. But yeah, you're right. The low owned Homa Morikawa, or if you have a little chase in you and a little penchant for risk, I think Cam Davis is kind of interesting.
I don't understand the 2% that's playing Ches Reavie. I mean, you guys,
sickos, true sick. R1 and done. I got $0 from Colin Morikawa last week. You got 61,000 from Tony Finau. I have a $4.4 million lead.
So is this even conceivable for me? Like, I need to win the Open Championship and
you have
FedEx Cup.
You have like 4 elevated events left, and the $3.5 million for first in like all of them.
Gosh, is it really? But that, you have to. I'm also assuming that you're not picking guys that are earning a fair amount of money in them as well. So I do need 2 things to kind of go right for me. I need at least 2 wins down the stretch.
Yes.
In elevated events.
Yes.
I would say.
Yes.
You fire away first.
Yeah, so I'm just going to take the guy that is the favorite, and you used him last week, so I'll take Tony Finau. And I'm concerned about it. Like, I don't love this, but I think that generally speaking, in a head-to-head one and done, if I have the guy who is the favorite or co-favorite available to me, I have to use him. I have concerns about the putter, but this is the strategy I have to live with.
I'm taking Ricky Fowler.
Yep. Honestly, I would have taken him had I not used him in the Texas Open. I've already used him. So that makes a lot of sense. So Tony Finau and Ricky Fowler for us. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Don't think so. Happy 4th of July. You got anything fun planned this weekend?
Well, our neighborhood has they're not doing fireworks, which I like. I don't like fireworks. I don't get fireworks. Not a firework guy. They are doing like a laser light show, which is just good enough for me. I don't need the firework thing. And then I think we're probably going to go to Armina's sister's house at some point. So yeah, we're just hanging around. What about you?
I'm going to. Have you been to Idaho, Sun Valley, Idaho? Going for the first time out there. Yeah.
Oh.
And my girlfriend parents have a place out there. I've never been before, but it looks fairly exciting and fun.
All right. That's cool. Well, enjoy very much. And we've got an exciting week of Rocket Mortgage action for you this weekend. Big thanks to producer Mina. She does all the hard work behind the scenes. Follow Andy on Twitter at ADPLackSports. You can find me at RickRunGood. This has been your betting preview for this week's Rocket Mortgage Classic. Good luck.